And welcome back to Late Night Lately, the Late Night Show. I'm your host, Chad White. If you didn't know, this is the late night show for the website, cpluscomedy.com. Like I just said, it's a website. Go there sometimes. It's a website sometimes. This is a late episode. I meant to do it last week, but I was busy. It was my birthday, and I, quite frankly, didn't want to do anything. Okay, anyway. Here we are. We're back in it again. It's as I was setting this up, as I was getting things ready for this show, and there's not much. I mean, I had a story that was lined up probably 2 weeks ago, or no, it was last week. Anyway, I had a story that was lined up that I'm going to cover. However, I just knew that lay down. I just knew that. Getting all of the videos and everything that were going to be linked from the shows it's difficult to choose something that's interesting, that'll stand out. That doesn't typically, I try not to go for the ones that already have a lot of views, but if it's something that stands out, then I'm going to give it the thing the most. I'm going to give the thing the most. But anyway, I'm just gonna give it the air it needs to breathe or whatever. Just post it in there. I don't have water over here. I'm so thirsty. But when I was linking things, as I was linking things, with the Daily Show was off last week, and they'll be back next week, or this week, one of those. No, this week's the 4th of July. But anyway, with the Daily Show off, I'm looking at, and after midnight gone, I'm looking at the list of shows, and it is getting increasingly smaller. And it stinks to see late night shows and I spoke about this in the last episode last week. It stinks seeing late night shows just disappear. We are seeing this genre go. And after I saw 28 weeks later, after seeing 28 years later, I did rewatch the first two, but after seeing 28 years later, when there was no people of color, after what, like, truly, there's one character that came from off the island. If you know the story of the movie, then you'll know the story. Who came from off the island? Who could have been a person of color? Just saying. Anyway. I'll talk about that in the constitutionals, but with 28 days later is known to not reinvent the zombie genre, but reinvigorate it. A genre of horror, a subgenre of horror movie that was essentially gone, and it was the thing to bring everything back. And then we can add to that The Walking Dead. And then George Romero's continuance of doing his later movies like Dawn of the Dead. I would love for... I don't know what it's going to take. It might be Netflix's ability to put out a show and it be the biggest thing in the world. But... It would take dedication, and to some extent, that's what NBC was doing with the Lily Singh show when she took over Carson's time slot. But I do think that it would take a network or a production company just continued willingness to want to make these types of shows. So anyway, I think late night, there is a reason. Yes, podcasting has become this new version style of late night, but there's something to the showmanship that late night has. Be it with a show like late night with Lily. What was her show called? A Little Late with Lily Singh, and I don't know if that was show was called. An Elmo show that was on HBO Max, and Samantha Bee's show. Tonight Show, James Corden's show, as dislikable of a person he is, his show was still, it brought a little bit more energy back and it made Fallon step up. And then, you have John Oliver's show, which is basically another version of The Daily Show. It's, but the longer monologue section. We can still do this, and it would take, for a lot of what Everybody's Live did right, and I blame this on Netflix. I blame this next part on Netflix. There should have been more breakouts from that show online. It should have its own YouTube channel. It should have its own TikTok channel. It should be posted again and again and again. Do the same exact things that every show is doing, from the broadcast shows to the cable show. Yeah, it's one, The Daily Show. To the premium cable shows, which is John Oliver's show. Post everything. And I'm talking everything online. Break it up. It doesn't matter. You're still going to get the money. All right, let's get into This Week in Late Night. On the Tonight Show, which I have to go over to, Fallon had a bevy of people, including, let me triple check and see if this is right, because I don't know if this is true. He had Brad Pitt do a little bit. He also had Charlize Theron, Jensen Ackles, which, if you mention that guy's name anywhere, it's going to get so many views. Scarlett Johansson, Jay Farrow, Frankie Grande, Jonathan Bailey, who I thought was Orlando Bloom, in this thumbnail. And I went, oh, Orlando Bloom's doing an interview after he's getting a divorce. Abby Elliott, Carol G, Jeremy Allen White. And Carol G also performed. And Brandy and Monica, who I linked to. And Lucas Nelson also performed. This Brad Pitt thing was interesting because he went on Dax Shepard's podcast, but he didn't do any late night appearances. In fact, I think with Wolf's, he only appeared in a prepared bit alongside George Clooney on Colbert's show. Seth Meyers had a busy week. And he mentioned this, and I did notice it, but it wasn't something that I immediately, took to heart. But he mentioned this in the correction segment on YouTube, that usually when they have a closer look, it's on Mondays and Wednesdays. It was on Tuesday last week as well. It's interesting. Uma Thurman, Maddie Matheson, Charlize Theron, Jason Mantzoukas, Allison Williams, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who's I can never remember all three of those names. I'm always like Jeffrey something Smith, Jacob Soboroff, Mariska Hargitay, and Mike Drucker all appear on the show, and the desk bits included not just a closer look. We also were privy to another Jeff Wright moment. That Jeff Wright's the writer, and Leave Him Alone guy, which is something I enjoy hearing. I love the Leave Him Alone guy. I think it's very funny. Moving on, we had for Late Show. That's a busy week for the what's his face as well. He spoke to the New York mayoral race Democratic winner Zoran Mondani. And he also spoke to Brad Lander. Idris Elba was there. John Cena had I think it was a really good episode, the John Cena one, with Lord as well. Sienna Spiro performed. Calissa Ward was was an interviewee. Michael C. Hall also popped up too, talking about, I believe, the Dexter spinoff, the second season of that. I don't really know. And then there's nothing after that for CBS. On Jimmy Kimmel Live, Diego Luna was the guest host, the first guest host, which I thought was very strange to do it. I understand why they didn't take 2 weeks off, because everybody was going to take off this week. But I understand why they didn't take 2 weeks off. However, it did make me think. It did make me go, why are they doing a guest host this week, last week, this week, and then taking 2 weeks off? I don't know. Or taking next week off. So while Diego Luna is the host next week, I believe, or this week, I believe next week it'll be Anthony Anderson, who I would, if Kimmel decides to leave, and if Kimmel decides to leave in the next couple of years, which I think is very possible. I think in 5 years Kimmel will be gone from Jimmy Kimmel Live. And I think that last year, I think they will have to, like, ABC will have to convince him. that's my theory. I think he'll be gone by the end of Trump's presidency. And if ABC decides to continue going with a late night show, I have 2 ideas of how the show is going to continue. I think they cut it down. I think they cut it down from an hour, 45 minutes, 42 minutes, down to half an hour. B, I also think that they offer the hosting spot to Anthony Anderson. That's just my thoughts. Diego Luna hosted. He spoke to Neza Adria Ajorna, his co-star from Andor. Neza also performed. Patton Oswalt he spoke to. Alan Tudyk, Tiffany Haddish, the guys from the new Superman movie. Ariella Barber, Good Charlotte performed. Heidi Klum, Dolores Huerta, and Emma Stone. Diego's he's a good showman. I think he did a wonderful job as a host. And Hermanos Gutierrez performed. This is setting these shows when you're guest hosting. It's either pass fail, and not a lot of people fail. For guest hosts on the Daily Show, I think a lot of people failed. Not a lot, but I think some people failed. But these are just like pass fail. The writers, they know how the wheel turns, the wheel spins on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Writers and producers, so they can easily set this up, and just truly the only reason why a guest host would not do well for a show like this, even for a show like the Daily Show. I was going to say the Discovery Channel. For the Daily Show, the only reason why a host would not do well is not because the jokes aren't funny. It's not because the news of the day. It's because they weren't up for the task, and Diego was up for the task. Whereas before Jon Stewart came back to host Mondays, when they were guest hosts on the Daily Show, I'm not telling tales out of school, but because I do believe that even Michael Costa and Jordan Clapp, even like some of the hosts, the correspondents even mentioned this in passing in interviews or on podcasts. Because I remember specifically Michael Costa just kind of hinted at it, like some people just weren't prepared, and if you're not prepared, then the show is going to be a big stinker. And John Oliver also covered AI slop. I admittedly I have not seen that episode, and I'm excited to sit down and watch this past episode from this week as well as the AI slop episode, because I am not a fan of AI. I'm not a fan of people using it to their using it and like relying on it. I'm a fan of people using it as a tool, in the same way that I use spell check as a tool. That's the only way that I am using AI at this point. There's a reliance. There we go. There's a reliance on AI that people are having that is too much, especially with how nascent AI is. Case in point, I read an article this morning on the New York Times. Let me see if I can find it. It was about an artist, a neon light artist, who, let's see, newsletters, saved articles, no. It was about a neon light artist who uses AI in every step of her life. She has AI wake her up. She has it tell her in the middle of the day what's going on with her calendar and stuff like that. And that was just too much. I don't know if I can find this. Maybe I just type there's search engine on the New York Times is just, here we go. How a neon light artist spends her day in the studio. And this is from Nadav Gavrilov on the New York Times. And he covers Lena Imamura, who is the co-owner of Glow Studio, GLO, studio in Manhattan. And they do these things called routines on the New York Times, where it's just talking about how an artist has a routine. Somebody on Broadway, an actor, a writer, a musician, or just whatever. Truly anybody who's an artist, a painter. And this woman uses the AI is mentioned so much here. It's ridiculous how somebody, and I'm sure, yes, there's a lot of people that she says she has ADHD, which is I know that was very dismissive, but it's, come on. She says things like it's like I have ADHD, so it's like gamifying and making everything novel and fun is really important. They have she uses AI just to speak to her and deliver lines of dialogue to her, which is I think is just insane. And again, I don't want to take away anything from the art she creates with neon lights, but man, just the idea of relying on AI for this is insane. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, let's move on to the topic so I can record the other show. Now, this comes from The Wrap, written by my good friend Kayla Cobb. What? I better be able to read this. All right. It's under The Wrap Pro, and I went to my webpage paywall tool, and but I'm realizing here that it is not beyond the paywall right now. Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show sees 55% boost in social media views year over year. Exclusive. Head of digital and supervising producer Nick Dyer explains how the NBC staple secured 9.2 billion views in 1 year. Now, I talk about this. I've spoken about this a couple of times, how I'm looking at the Tonight Show. Oh, that's the last tab I have open. I closed down everything, and I didn't realize that the Tonight Show one was the one I didn't close. I'm looking. I mention this all the time. I look through when I set up the episode of Late Night Lately. I'm going through the YouTube channels of every late night show, and I'm picking. And I mentioned I'm picking a video that I think is like either really important and not like important, like, oh, we have to, everybody's, but just something that just like really good, a best bit from the week, more or less, be an interview or a desk piece, whatever. And I see all the time these views, like the Weird Al Yankovic interview from 2 weeks ago has 72,000 views. The Orlando Bloom interview from a couple of weeks ago also has 71,000 views. But then you go over to Jimmy's monologues and they have 250,000 or 500,000. And then you go over to big players like Lee Byung-hun from Squid Game or Dakota Johnson. Even the stand-up has 71,000. So it doesn't make sense to me how sometimes, you can go to Colbert. It doesn't matter who. You can go to Colbert. You go to this person. You go to that person, and they'll have 1 million views on a desk piece, on a monologue. But then you go over to an interview, and people just don't follow through on the interview part. They want to watch a closer look, but they don't want to sit down and watch Mariska Hargitay be interviewed about My Mom Jane documentary. Anyway, Kayla says that there's a team led by Nick Dyer, the show's head of digital and supervising producer, that leads the Tonight Show on TikTok and Instagram Reels and all the other socials. They said that this year, The Tonight Show saw 9.2 billion views across social media from June 1st, 2024 to May 30th, 2025, which is a 55% rise compared to the same period last year. The Tonight Show is the number one late night show when it comes to social followers and engagement. The show currently has 100 million followers across social media, more than any of its competitors. That digital dominance wasn't an overnight sensation, but a slow build, according to Dyer. Dyer moved over from The Daily Show in 2021. When he started, Fallon's guests were still all virtual, which meant the show could post clips of the episode, but that its digital channels had limited opportunities for exclusive content. It wasn't until the show resumed taping in studio that its digital strategy evolved. Now nearly every guest has their own tailor-made bit that lives exclusively on social media, and it's often whenever I go to post something from C Plus Comedy on TikTok, I'll open TikTok, and I think the C Plus Comedy TikTok only follows late night stuff and like a few celebrities, but I'll see something inevitably from the Tonight Show, and the same thing happens on Instagram when I go to Instagram for C Plus Comedy. I'll see something from the Tonight Show, and it'll be so, of the moment, of the zeitgeist in terms of memes or whatever. And I'll see it and I'll go, I don't know what this is. And I'm sure it's great and it's got 1 million likes, but it's just not for me. But it's always different. And it's never the same thing. She got an email from Google Fiber. Oh. It's not always just an interview. He says it's a sketch, it's a game. The content with Jimmy and the guests inherently goes viral. A big reason for the engagement the show has seen comes down to research and creativity. Dyer knows that there is an endless amount of competition when you're posting to social media. Instead of falling into the trap of chasing the latest trend, Dyer's team extensively researches both relevant social trends and the work of the show's upcoming guests. A great example of this happened during Ariana Grande's November 2024 appearance. For The Tonight Show digital channels, The Wicked Star and Fallon recreated the viral video of a man shouting at his friends about the Wicked Witch of the East bro. Oh, I remember that video. I remember that original video. Grande and Fallon, because that was on Vine, wasn't that? Yeah. That was a fun. I remember that. I remember that. That was from Vine. I just watched the video. I don't know if you heard it. I did see the levels going higher and higher. But anyway, I remember that video. That's from Vine. It was such a funny video. So funny that I think that was a liked video on my YouTube channel. Anyway, Grande and Fallon's recreation of the beloved meme secured 23.5 million views and 3.2 million likes on TikTok alone. The video is so well received that NBC even released a side-by-side comparison of the two videos. See, and that's why people are going to school now, or yeah, I guess they are. They're going to school for marketing, but also social media engagement and stuff like that. People go to school to learn this now, whereas 15 years ago, people would just go to school for marketing, and social media was kind of like the back end of it all. It's astounding to me how this is 10 years ago when I was applying for jobs, and I barely had writing and producing on my resume. My mom would say, just apply to social media jobs. And, every so often I would get an interview or something, but now that wouldn't work because I'm a TV producer or a digital writer, and people are going to school now and doing this stuff for a living, and they know this stuff hand and foot. They know the SEO, they know all that stuff. I just don't have, I was going to say, I would have to do an SEO deep dive. I don't have the want, or B, the know how to do that. It's fascinating to me how you can go to TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and those are the only social platforms I'll recognize. What's the other one? Blue Sky? Yes, Blue Sky. It's fascinating to me how you can go to those platforms and just instantly, well, not instantly, but like parse what's good to follow, what trend is good to follow, what trend is not good to follow, how they're building the algorithms and all that stuff. It's amazing. I know it would take a long time to just for that, let's say the Wicked Witch of the East thing. That's a 15-second video. I know it would take a long time to look at it, get the words down, get the movements down, and then shoot it on top of doing an interview, on top of preparing the show. But it pays off dividends in the end. Dyer says they plan weeks in advance for this stuff. We only have a very short window to shoot with guests. They get here, they've got to get prepped for the interview. They have to get hair and makeup. They have to get camera ready, and they have to get milked before you know it. Mic'd. Before you know it, the show's about to start. We have time to prep for everything beforehand, so we have that 5-minute window to shoot Jimmy and a talent. We're ready to go. I think it's good. I think it's good a lot. And, you know, Jimmy's show does it more, if anything, than every other show, because they're actually doing stuff that is meant to be socially shared on top of cutting stuff that is also going to be shared as well from the show itself. Whereas if you go to Kimmel, they're not really doing that. And for you know, other shows, they have to, like Seth Meyers' show, he's doing corrections. So that's something different. For Kimmel, he's doing this weird conspiracy thing that is releasing on the YouTube channel. That's different. You know, I hate to say weird. For John Oliver, they're releasing the whole episode on YouTube. So it's everyone has their niche, like a niche. For the Daily Show, they're doing it after the cut, and I think that's really successful. And it's something that no other show has been able to recreate. I think after the cut is such a good social thing, especially on off weeks, especially during the week when it's not even an off week, and they just have this extra thing. It's not all going to be gold, but it works. All right, listen, if you like what you heard here, head to the website, sequelscomedy.com, where you can see me talk to famous people sometimes. If you want to see me talk to famous people, if you want to see a video version of the show, go to youtube.com/sequelscomedy, where you can see a video version of every other podcast we do, including LinkedIn Logs, the Jobs Podcast, and the Constitutionals, the Entertainment Business News Podcast, as well as the interviews, which is where I interview famous people. Follow us on social, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, @C+Comedy, me, @Chad Black White. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.